Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again it is Sunday, and that means it's time for the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, a weekly vlog that I put out where I ask you as my viewers and subscribers about something that deals with guns, gun culture, politics, history, current events, or the news that I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. And this week's question is one that I don't like to ask because it deals with these mass tragedy events. I know that if you're watching this channel, you love the Second Amendment and you love firearms, and you know how we as legal and law-abiding gun owners are constantly demonized by the mainstream media and many celebrities when it comes to these events that they promote. And by promote, I mean they constantly talk about. They extol these events because it helps push their gun control agenda. But this week's question is not about the root causes or the solutions, but it's a little conspiratorial. After all, every time one of these things happens, inevitably there are people out there that think this was some type of mass orchestrated event. And often these people are said to be crazy nut jobs. But I was curious, how many people out there actually think there might be something to this? Now, I'm not saying that there is a grand conspiracy, because as I say in the question, I don't think that there is. And I wanted to put that out there just because I wanted people to know that while I think there might be something going on, I don't think there is a grand conspiracy, because I see incompetence in our government all the time. I find it hard that a government that can't keep the potholes filled and the stoplights working can somehow orchestrate these mass tragedy events at the right time to push an agenda. But it doesn't mean that there's not people behind the scenes possibly trying to manipulate what's happening on this grand chessboard. So, with all that said, let's dive right into this week's question. This morning I woke up to the news that another potential mass shooting event took place in a mall in Greenwood Park, Indiana. Thankfully, this event was stopped by a legally armed citizen. Also, this week, the U.S. House of Representatives is set to vote on a massive anti-gun bill that would ban most firearms in the United States. While I'm not a conspiracy theorist and do not subscribe to the idea that any of this is orchestrated by anyone, I always find the timing of these events to be suspicious. Examples would be the recent tragedies that occurred days before the Supreme Court released their landmark Bruin decision, as well as the congressional baseball game shooting years ago, which took place hours before they were set to vote on the Hearing Protection Act. Often we find out later that many of the scumbags who commit these horrific events were known to law enforcement. Do you believe any of these events and the timing of them could be part of an organized effort to put a gun control bias in the minds of the American people and/or our elected representatives? Or is it a coincidence, or possibly just the media awareness of such events that coincide with the potential votes and rulings on guns? So the main reason that I'm asking this is because inevitably, and I have mentioned this on the channel, whenever I know the Supreme Court is going to be issuing some ruling, or Congress is about to vote on something, whether it be anti-gun or pro-gun, I always have mentioned on the channel, well, there's about to be an event. Now, I have no knowledge of these events. I don't know anybody orchestrating these events, but I just feel it in my bones. I know, well, something's going to happen. It always inevitably does. Now, the people that commit these tragedies, of course, are crazy people. I don't think that they are the organizers, but it always makes me wonder, why is the timing of these events always so suspicious? Is it just a coincidence? Maybe because people are talking about guns in the media, these people that are susceptible to commit these heinous acts go ahead and say, well, now is the time. We've all seen the videos where we talk about possible root causes for these events, such as the media portraying these killers in a way that makes them want to go out in a blaze of glory too. After all, they want to be the ones that changed the gun laws. They want to be the ones that racked up the biggest body counts. And because of such, and they know that they will go down in history because the media will, in a way, adore them because they were the ones that made the gun control movement happen. And they get to express their rage at other people that they don't even know and to ruin lives. So they get all this satisfaction before hopefully they're killed by either law enforcement or, in this case, a law-abiding citizen. They get to go down in this blaze of glory because the way the media treats them. But as I said, there are many people out there that think there is somebody behind the scenes, maybe one person, maybe a cabal of people that put this together and orchestrated, and they have this list of people that are known to law enforcement, and maybe they just kind of nudge them over the edge a little bit to make this happen. Maybe they're not really trying to do something massive. They just try to hope that if they can push and pull the strings of enough people that are susceptible to this, they can sway public opinion. Now, as I said, I have no evidence of this, and I actually have a theory to what the real cause and solution of this connection is. But I'll talk about that when we get into this week's results and I talk about each item. But with that said, let's see what you guys actually think. With over 1,000 votes this week, we have yes, there is a grand conspiracy and all these are orchestrated, 59%. Yes, not organized, but law enforcement in action is allowed, 14%. No, government is too incompetent to organize anything like this, 16%. Neither, it's all just coincidence, 8%. And something else, explain in the comments, 3%. And I'll be very honest with you, the results of this poll actually surprised me. The result that I thought was going to get the overwhelming support was going to be option 2. Yes, not organized, but law enforcement in action is allowed. And for me, that's what frustrates me about these events more than anything else. Because as I said, all these suspects often are known to law enforcement, or they've been watching them, or they've been in contact with them, and they do absolutely nothing. And it frustrates you because you're like, well, if these law enforcement agencies or agents actually did their job, well, this person wouldn't have been able to commit this crime. But it's allowed to happen for whatever reason. And then they want to come and restrict our rights because of their incompetence or their inaction. But I was really surprised because almost 60% of the people that watch this channel thought there is a grand conspiracy. Now, I don't have any answers to this. Is there a grand conspiracy? As I said, the timings of all these events really are suspect. It's very suspicious. As I said, I can almost tell you to the day or to the week when something is going to happen major in the news because, oh yeah, Congress is about to vote on some pro-gun bill. We all know what's about to happen 1 week ahead of time. It happens every single time. It's always the same story. Now, I have a personal belief in what is causing this, but as I said, I'll go through each one of these and tell you guys my personal opinion. So is there a grand conspiracy and all these are orchestrated? I know it sure looks like it, and I'm very surprised that so many people think this. I didn't think it would be the overwhelming majority. After all, people in the media, and I think many of our friends and colleagues, if you would admit that in public, to go, you are crazy. But to have 60%, well, that's pretty overwhelming. It's also very disheartening in a way because it gives people, I feel, the feeling that none of these events are real, when I actually believe that a lot of these events are real. You know, when it comes to conspiracy theories, there's ones that are more plausible and there are ones that are less plausible. And when you start to go down that rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, sure, do I think conspiracy theories have been proven real in the past? Well, yes, there have been some, but then there's a lot that aren't. And you can go down, as I said, that rabbit hole of like the famous Walmart tunnels. If you guys don't know what that is, go check it out. There's a whole bunch of people that think Walmart built these tunnels all across the United States, and that's why you don't see many Walmart semis traversing our nation's highways. I know. That's just what they believe, contrary to any evidence. But yes, there's a lot of people that think this is some type of grand conspiracy being funded by some cabal of billionaires, or maybe the politicians working in cahoots with the CIA or the FBI or the ATF, and they find these people that can easily be pushed over the edge that they would have plausible deniability with, get them to do these actions, and then come to us and say, see, we need more gun control laws. I definitely see how it can look that way. But personally, I don't think the government is competent enough to have all of this orchestrated, because eventually somebody would talk. One of these patsies that actually survives the incidents would speak out. There would be something that would come out. There's just too many people involved. It's like the moon landing, that people say the moon landing was fake. Well, there were hundreds of thousands of people that were part of the Apollo program. You would think that one of them would come out and say, hey, you know that rocket that I worked on? It actually couldn't do that. They were just having us fill the panels with foam and not really wires, or all the math is completely wrong. Well, nobody ever did that, because I believe the moon landing is real. So I think too many people would be involved in this, and eventually there would be a deathbed confession or some type of evidence would come out. Eventually, there is just too many avenues for something to happen, some information to come out, and people to find out. So I don't think it's a grand conspiracy. Then we have, yes, not organized, but law enforcement in action is allowed. And as I mentioned, this is the one that is most frustrating. Very rarely, when it comes to these lone wolf attackers, are they just out of nowhere. We always find out, oh yeah, this person was called by their school police, they were brought in for counseling, they were known to local law enforcement, they were a trouble kid, they were having issues at school, they brought weapons to school, they were expelled, and all of this stuff. And then it comes to find out, oh yeah, the ATF proceeded on their background check, said it's okay. Then you have the question of where they get the money to buy these expensive firearms. I don't know about you, but some of these guns that they've been using in these mass tragedies are really, really expensive guns. And I know when I was 18 years old, I didn't have $5,000 to go to the gun store and buy 2 Daniel Defense AR-15s. But who knows where all this is coming from. But as I said, it's suspicious, but suspicion doesn't always mean there's a grand conspiracy. But the frustration is the law enforcement in action. And that's what gives people this feeling like, well, if they were known for years, why did they allow this to happen? Why couldn't anything be done? So it looks like it's a grand conspiracy when it's really just law enforcement incompetence. And that's all that it is. Then we have no, government is too incompetent to organize anything like this. And this is the one that possibly I would kind of vote on, but I'm going to vote for a different one personally. But I do think government is very incompetent. I ask you to name one thing they do better than the private sector. I'm waiting. Now I know some of you guys are going to say the military, but let's just be honest. Right now our military is in a state of disarray. Now I don't want to get into this, but right now it seems like the military is more concerned with diversity and transgenderism than they are actually doing their job of defending the nation. After all, I think a military's job is to destroy things and kill people. That's what they're there to do. But now they care more about diversity hires and making sure everybody has the right pronouns. So even that they can't do. So do you really think that there is somebody pulling all these strings? No, because I believe, as the saying goes, don't attribute to malice what can easily be explained by incompetence. Then we have neither. It is all just coincidence. And I believe it is Sigmund Freud who said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. There's nothing else to it. These events happen from time to time, and Congress is voting on pro-gun control and anti-gun control legislation all the time. So it's just going to line up because these events are always happening, and there's always gun bills that are being presented in state legislatures across the country and in the National Congress. So it may look like there's something going on and that there's some type of connection, but truly it is just a coincidence. It is a possibility. And then finally we have something else explained in the comments. Now this is the one that I would actually vote for, and I have no evidence of this, but I have always felt that as humans, while we are all individuals and we all think differently, there's something about a community that has some type of group think. And I also believe in the power of either positive or negative thinking. People that think negative and think bad things are going to happen to them, well, bad things happen to them. People that think good things are going to happen to them typically have good things that happen to them. Do they have the power to manipulate the universe around them? No, but I know that everything in your life is the result of every decision you have ever made, from whether to drink a Pepsi or a Coke up to who you are going to marry, if you're going to marry anybody at all. So the big decisions and the small decisions have all added up to where you're at today. And so where am I going with this? It's just this feeling that I have. I believe in economics it's called the invisible hand, that people just going about their daily lives and trading in commerce, goods and services, create this economy. It just works. There's no overarching person in control of our economy. It's the invisible hand. Well, it's almost like these events are being guided by an invisible hand. We collectively as a society have this awareness. And while no one may go to these people that commit these tragedies, and I shouldn't even call them people, they really are truly horrific scumbags. But there's like this groupthink that as a society, we kind of expect this to happen. And half of our society, I think, from time to time, is kind of hoping something like this is going to happen because they can use it to their advantage, both politically and financially. After all, a lot of these anti-gun groups that are funded by millionaires and billionaires are only going to get more money when these events happen. Now, am I saying they actually want people to die? No. I am not saying that at all. I'm just saying they want the statistics. Because as Joseph Stalin said, the death of one person is a tragedy. The death of millions is a statistic. So I know what you're thinking. Jason, you must be crazy. But I've always felt in my personal life, like I have said things like, I want this to happen. And it might not happen today. I might not even actively pursue that happening. But in a year or 2 years, it does. Why it happens, I don't know. Am I changing the universe around me? As I said, I have a suspicion that I begin to make very small decisions that course correct into a particular direction. And I think that right now there's a lot of people working behind the scenes of our government and elected representatives that are hoping these things are going to happen. And in a way, this groupthink is causing these people to move in that direction to commit these horrific acts. Also, the media sensationalism of it all. It's not the main cause, but it's part of it because they go on and on and on. And these people that commit these horrific acts, they like chaos, they like hate, they like destruction. And they see what happens to our culture when these events happen and how celebrities will say things on like The View and we should take away all guns, and you have the reaction on this side. It just fuels this chaos. And that's part of the grand plan of the shooters and the people that commit these horrific acts. They go out in this blaze of glory because for their 15 minutes of fame, they get the American people to fight and to hate each other. Their actions cause chaos and destruction. And that makes those people happy. To be honest with you, if when these events happened, if nobody really said anything beyond just reporting the statistics, this many people were shot at this event, we're not going to release who the names are, and that is it, I have a feeling these events would go away completely because it would be out of the mind of these people that might have the propensity to commit these acts because they're like, well, that's not going to get me the attention that I want. So that's my thoughts on all this. You guys might think I'm a little bit crazy, thinking it's this unaided hand, this invisible hand, as I said, that is guiding everything, both pro and negative. It's a groupthink as a community. So now that you guys know how I feel, let's see what you guys had to say with this week's top-rated comments. And this week's top-rated comment comes from Aaron K., who said, I would say it's mainly through the timing of media because they want to change the idea people have about the Second Amendment. It's been a tactic that media has been using for a long time, and most of the time it's sadly effective. And I do agree. As I said, this is kind of going back to that consequence action. It's just because the media is constantly talking about it, it almost promotes these events, and it makes people that would do them quicker or actually act out on these thoughts. Then we have Chris Rodriguez, who says, there are over 350 million people in this country. I can completely understand the idea that inaction or incompetence by law enforcement, mostly federal, but some local law enforcement, allows some of these people to slip through the cracks. It only takes one slip up and a prohibited possessor gets a hold of a firearm to commit heinous crimes. Buffalo shooter. Feds knew from his Discord warnings but did nothing. They were monitoring his chats. Uvalde. LA knew but did nothing. The community never said anything despite the signs. Sutherland Springs. Fed knew that he was a domestic abuser but didn't mark him as a prohibited purchaser on his background check. July 4th shooter. Local LE knew but didn't act to prevent his ownership of a firearm as a prohibited possessor. Fort Hood. Prohibited possessor never marked on a background check by the feds. And that's the frustrating thing. It's their incompetence. We already have these laws on the books. They don't enforce them, and these bureaucrats don't do their job. And then they come to us and go, see, we need to pass more laws. Well, if you're not enforcing the laws that are on the books now, well, what assurance that these new laws are going to work? Because you're not going to enforce them anyway. And the only people that are going to be hurt by this and stifled by this are the law-abiding gun owners. Then we have Bradley Morgan, who says, I don't know if they're all orchestrated, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if at least one of them was. And I kind of feel like this is the middle ground approach. No, I don't think all of them are. But sure, there could be one or two. As I said, it's always suspicious. Now, I'm not saying which ones. I'm not saying any of them are fake. It's just kind of a thought experiment. After all, I think it's Occam's razor. And it says that with the lack of evidence, the outcome that requires the least amount of assumptions is often the right one. And when it comes to many of these events, they are very suspicious, and the timing of things is extremely suspicious. So without evidence, you have to look and go, well, what's the most probable cause for this? Or what happened? And it really does make you think. Then we have Brian Edgett, who says, we have been told that the timing is the driving force of the laws. The Las Vegas and Sutherland Springs were just a month apart. We had not had a big shooting for a long time before those two. I find it funny how laws are broken by the shooter, so more must be added. Yeah, it really seems to be weird. They always happen in these groups. Is it media sensationalism, or is there somebody orchestrating it behind the scenes? I don't know. I'm not really going to take a stand on this, but you guys know what I think, but I know a lot of you guys think that there is. And all of these answers and all these solutions, well, I think they all have some type of kernel of truth and a probability. Then we have Mitchell 245, who says, I would not say grand conspiracy, but I would say that these things and the timings are suspect. Just like the late release of a potential shooter in Houston stopped months ago, but only now the news is airing the story. The timing is suspect, to say the least. Yes, and that's what these elected representatives and these officials don't understand, that through their incompetence, it really loses the public trust. People go, there's got to be something going on here. It just happens too often. And then finally, we have J.C. Denton, who says, isolation and loneliness are the United States' biggest problems. The economy, foreign policy, pale in comparison. Everything else is secondary. If young men are living with endless idle time and no families, antisocial behavior is not only allowed but reinforced in American society, and has been for a long time. They don't need to orchestrate what they can simply capitalize on and come out looking morally superior. And I think that JC here actually echoes my sentiment exactly. We live in a fallen world. No, I'm not going the religious path right now. I'm just saying we live in a fallen world. Now, there's always been decadence, and there's always been a moral corruption to humanity. And sometimes we look back on things like the 1950s or 60s and go, those were the good old days when nothing really happened. But the truth of the matter is we always look through history through rose-colored glasses. There were mass shootings in the 1940s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 20s. It's always happened. There's always been violence. People have always been evil. People have always wanted to commit acts of terror on other people because that's what evil people do. And these evil people have existed since humanity began. And there might not be an answer to this. But as I said, today we're not looking for the root cause. I'm just asking you, is there a grand conspiracy? And it appears that most of you guys think there is. Who knows? There might be. There's a probability on every single one of these, and as time goes on, I sure hope that evidence presents itself so we can figure all of this out. And if somebody truly is orchestrating it, well, they need to be held accountable. So that's the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week, one that I was not looking forward to make, but I had to ask, and the results really surprised me. So if you want to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel. I've also put a link in the description below. Go over there and see what next week's poll is about. Vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top-rated comments of the week. So let me know. What do you guys think about my opinions? I know, maybe it's a little bit weird and paranormal. The invisible hand that guides society. It's a groupthink thing. Huh. Well, let's find out what you guys have to say about that. So, I look forward to seeing what you all have to say, and I'll see you in next week's poll. So, as always, thanks for watching.